Welcome, everyone, to The Rundown, presented by Dick's Sporting Goods. And on this week's edition of The Rundown, we got matinee magic against Charlotte FC. The Rapids head up north to Vancouver, and then we go off the pitch with winger Omir Fernandez. That and much more on The Rundown. Welcome once again to the Colorado Rapids podcast and this week's rundown presented by Dick's Sporting Goods. I am your host, Mike Ravolo, alongside my good friend, Drew Moore. Drewby, how we doing? How we feeling after a 3-point weekend, brother?
I'm so happy.
Oh, me too, bro.
I'm so happy to be here. Like, it's Monday morning, and we get to, you and me, talk some Rapids, some soccer, some MLS after 3 points, in which you celebrated your birthday on Saturday.
I did.
So we need to have your birthday more often on Rapids games if we could do that. But, yeah, it was a pretty good weekend, I would say.
If we have my birthday too often, I'm going to age a little too quickly for my liking, Drewby. I'm going to end up like
Aren't we all, though?
Well, here's the
Already?
thing. I can't give you crap for like being vehicle now. I think we got two vehicles now on the podcast at this point.
We always have, Mike. You can always
What
give
do you
me
mean
crap.
always?
Oh, you didn't know?
Well, clearly I missed out on that. But it was an excellent weekend, Drewby.
Sure
coming
was.
off again the 3 points like we mentioned against the Charlotte FC. We're going to go through the highlights right now, just to look back on what was a great match for the Colorado Rapids, who were eventually able to go on and get their first 3 points at home here at Dick's Sporting Goods Park. I'm always down for a day game as well, Drew. Under
Give
the
me
sun.
more afternoon kickoffs.
I'm always down for it. We're going to start off here with the first chance on goal for Rafa Navajo.
Yeah, Rapids causing the coincidence there, forcing the coincidence, a good early shot.
And then Georgie here, I think this was like the best chance early on in the first half or later in the first half, Drewby.
There's a really good movement, and Georgie popping up centrally, which he spent most of his time in this match, and for good reason. And that was a good opportunity late in the first half.
And we talked about forward Patrick Ajima for Charlotte that he was going to be a threat. He showed it up, but Zach showed up as well.
Zach, good save, and really Keegan Rosenberry does well to defend this, and the only place he can go is to Zach's left, and he does what you expect Zach to do in that situation.
And the Rapids, after knocking on Charlotte's door, finally the door was open, and Georgie opened the scoring for the Rapids.
Omir Fernandez comes off the bench in his second of 3 games to provide the game-winning assist, and what an assist it was. And really, Georgi Mihailovic keeping his body over this ball. It bounces right in front of him, but to keep it down and put it in the corner, and that was really all the Rapids needed on the day.
And then this is the Rapids getting the PK after an incredible pass from Georgie and incredible effort from Rafa.
And that connection between Rafa and Georgie stands out in this play, and really moving Georgie up higher next to Rafa Navajo, and seeing what those two can do together. If Rafa doesn't get pulled down there, he's probably scoring. But Georgie puts away the penalty.
2 goals for Georgie. Almost could have had a hat trick with the free kick he had later on. But 3 points nonetheless for the Rapids. Again, the first 3 points, the first win that the Rapids get here at Dick's Sporting Goods Park for the 2024 season. So kind of going through some stats here between the Rapids and Charlotte on the day for the match. So the Rapids had 22 shots. Charlotte had 10. In terms of shots on goal, the Rapids had 6 versus Charlotte's 3. Corner kicks, 6 in favor of the Rapids, 3 from Charlotte. Possession numbers, the Rapids, as you typically would imagine, have a little less possession than the other team with 45.2% versus Charlotte, who like to play with the ball, keep possession of the ball at 54.8% of the possession. So, Drewby, again, like we mentioned, this is a very important 3 points for the Rapids, especially so here at home at Dick's Sporting Goods Park. And your general thoughts on the match, in this match between the Rapids and Charlotte FC?
It's interesting. I thought this was a dominant performance from the Rapids. Really good from start to finish on both sides of the ball. Defensively, very solid against a team that we knew coming in was performing at a pretty high level. And a lot of people talking about their attack, Pep Biel and Patrick Agiman and Wilfred Zaha and Leal Abada, and how they, had won their previous 2 games and were scoring goals kind of at will. And the Rapids, to shut them down the way they did defensively, was impressive. But to also go and score a couple goals yourselves, I didn't think this Rapids side looked that much different than they did the previous week against Portland. They executed in those moments when they needed to, And so much like we didn't want to get too down about our performance against Portland last Saturday, you don't want to get too high about this performance against Charlotte. but there's a lot of positives to take from it, and just their most complete match so far, the Rapids. I was impressed and thoroughly enjoyed watching that one.
A lot of positives, as you mentioned. One in particular was the defense, was the back line, in particular between Cheeto and Maxu, the center back pairing that, quite frankly, had to manhandle Patrick Agiman because he is as much of a handful as you're going to get in this league between his physical presence that he has, the pace that he has to run in behind back lines, and his ability to score that he's clearly shown as of last season going into this season that he's carried on. Doing so with the national team when he was called up for the Nations League matches last weekend, if I recall. So what did you make of the back line? I'm going to ask appropriately the center back here. What did you make of the center back pairing and the back line altogether, I would say, their performance on the night?
Cheeto and Maxu were fantastic on the night. And we've seen not even glimpses of it, but really all season so far, once Maxu came back and you paired those two together, it's been really, really solid. And they complement each other well, right? But they also have similar traits. They're big, they're athletic. They match up well against an Agiman. Not all center backs will, right? And you could see just the physical battle between all three of them, really. Maxu and Agiman several times getting tangled up and going down, and you see neither wanting to give each other an inch. When I was down field level before the match, I could not believe how big Patrick Agiman is. He made Cheeto and Maxu, who are big dudes, look at a normal size, But the physical output that both Cheeto and Maxu put into that match, and then really you got to talk about Keegan Rosenberry and Ian Murphy doing a very good job with those wingers in Zaha and Abada. Didn't see much of him. Zaha was frustrated. He's yelling at the fourth official. He's yelling at Chris Armas. He's yelling at his teammates. He's yelling at the Rapids, the players, the refs. That's when you've performed well defensively, when you get the attacking players uncomfortable. I didn't even notice Pep Biel. He was my guy to watch before the match. He had a couple little things here and there, but really non-existent for the most part. Just a dominant defensive performance led by Maxu and Cheeto.
Dominant, I think, is the best way to put it. And I think Patrick Agiman with a couple instances maybe that he had throughout the match with the one shot that we showed there in the highlights that he had on goal. Really non-existent, almost just like Pep Biel, which is a credit to the defense for this season so far. That's 3 shutouts in 6 matches so far, Drew, this season from the Rapids, which shows how defensively, how much more stable they are this season compared to last. It's very commendable just in terms of earning those shutouts, but also the way that they're doing it as well. And then as it relates to Charlotte, with how limited they were with their chances in this match against the Rapids, 0.8 expected goals. That's the lowest mark by a Rapids opponent this season. So again, just speaking to how defensively astute this Rapids side was on the day against Charlotte FC. Another thing was the attack, Drew B. If we look at the Rapids attack, particularly with some adjustments that they made in midfield, you could see there had been a bit of a rotation in the lineup in terms of where guys were situated. We'd seen Georgie kind of go out wide at one point, but have that liberty to be a free roaming 10, albeit starting on the left-hand side. This time, although he did start there, it seemed like he had a little bit more liberty, freedom to kind of move more naturally into his natural central 10 position. We saw Ollie Laraz play out wide as well, who we always know he's going to put in a shift and is just seems very multifunctional. He's very
Swiss Army knife.
Swiss Army knife is the term that I was looking for, but this is what happens when you get old and turn 31. I can't remember things. So
only 31. You are a young man still.
I would like to think so. I hope so. But Ollie just showing that you plug him in anywhere and he can help out. And then Cole, it looked like he felt a little bit more comfortable this time around. Josh doing his thing as he typically does at the 6th position. So overall, in terms of the attack, what did you see from the attack overall, Drew?
It was really good, and yeah, I do think that the main piece was moving Georgie back centrally. And early in the season, you're always tinkering, trying to find the best combination of personnel, and then where you place that personnel. And I do think that Georgie is most effective as a kind of a true number 10, and with the freedom maybe to wander out to the left, because he does tend to do that naturally at times, but you put him up close to Rafa Navarro, your number 9, who is the hardest working number 9 in this league and can get on the end of service, whether it be centrally or out wide. But have him work and combine with Georgie. And this is the magic that those two can create, right? Georgie getting a goal, and then the pass to Hoffa, which leads to the penalty, and maybe it frees up Ollie to wander around a little bit himself, and then Cole Bassett can kind of stay centrally and be that runner that he is. It looked really good, right? Moving Georgie back centrally. I don't know if that was necessarily planned, or if it just naturally kind of went that way in this match. But the attack looked really, really good, and stats don't always tell the story of what the match looked like. But this was a dominant performance from the Rapids on both sides of the ball, both defensively and in attack. And are the Rapids starting to figure out who they are, in particular in attack, because it takes a little bit for some teams to figure that out through the start of the season. But it certainly looked pretty darn good Saturday night.
And that was just the starters, Drew. That I just listed off the guys in terms of the guys who started the match against Charlotte. But we have to talk about one of our substitutes who came off the bench, and Omir El Tigre, as he likes to be called, Fernandez. Omir Fernandez, who came off the bench, and he was the one that assisted that first goal for Georgie. That's 2 matches, the first one being against San Jose, when he came off the bench and sets that game-winning goal up for Calvin Harris. Again, same deal here, sets up the goal for Georgie Mihailovic. How important, how vital was it for Omir to come off the bench and have that impact to open the scoring for the Rapids?
Huge. It made the difference in the match, right? In a moment where the Rapids had Charlotte pinned deep. We had 5 or 6 shots in the previous 10 minutes that were blocked by Charlotte defenders, right? Desperate defending, and they were doing a good job of it. Credit to Charlotte up to that point. And it's Omir who comes in and makes the difference, right? And it's a phenomenal finish from Georgie. It bounces right in front of him, but Omir, positive, takes on Nathan Byrne and gets the cross from that PAZ, that primary assist zone. For 2 game-winning assists in the last 3 games. Nobody wants to come off the bench. Nobody wants to start on the bench, right? Everybody wants to be that 90-minute player, and Omir can certainly be that 90-minute player. But right now, his job when he does start on the bench is to come in and make a difference, and he has. And I'll credit Calvin Harris, who scored the game-winning goal in San Jose, also came off the bench against Charlotte and made a difference against a backline that was starting to fatigue. You could see Doumbia, Byrne, hands on knees, starting early in the second half, but those two come on and affect the game in a positive way, and that's what you want from guys coming off the bench.
Tell you what, that altitude is not fun to deal with when you're not used to it.
It's not, man. It makes a difference.
So when you have guys like Calvin and Omir coming off the bench, I think that's kind of the last thing you want to see. And so with guys with fresh legs who are running at you, ready to go, get going when you're ready to just kind of walk off the pitch yourself as a defender on the other side of it. So, that's credit to obviously Omir for getting that assist to set up Georgie for the first goal, but Calvin, who just, with his pace, with his speed, just, again, the last thing you want to see when you've been defending for 70-plus minutes and then a fresh pair of legs and Calvin Harris coming off the bench to cause all sorts of problems for you.
You don't want to see it when you're not tired.
Much
less when your legs are gone and your lungs are gone. That's and it's something that the Rapids need to continue to take advantage. We know that the altitude takes effect on teams here, and so can you play that patient game early? Can you get them moving around? The Rapids in the first half did have some spells where they knocked it around side to side, get Charlotte moving. It takes a toll. And then you bring these guys in off the bench, and it could be lights out at that point, and it was on Saturday afternoon for Charlotte.
It absolutely was. And one last thing I wanted to ask you here, Drew, before we move on from the Charlotte match, was we noticed in this match where it felt like it could be a bit frustrating for the Rapids at moments, especially with the way Charlotte was defensively. They looked pretty good for close to 70, 75 minutes, just blocking shots, getting in the way of shots, limiting some of the chances that the Rapids had. So it could have been very easy for the Rapids to get frustrated and not be able to come away with the 3 points in the end, right? But they just kept going and insisting and eventually earned the 3 points on the day. So it's not just the win, but maybe I think how this Rapids side earns that win. How important is it that the Rapids, again, not just get the 3 points, but the manner in which they do it, especially being mentally tough against a very defensively astute Charlotte side on the day up until we open the scoring?
It's a belief in what you're doing, right? And what your coach wants you to be doing, right? Getting into the right areas. Omir Fernandez taking on Byrne, getting into that primary assist zone, getting numbers in the box. Hafa Navajo in the box, Calvin Harris in the box, Cole Bassett in the box, Georgi Mihailovic in the box, right? This was a game, calling it from the radio booth. It was like every time we were on attack, we had numbers in the box, right? And it's just staying patient, but continuing to do what you do, basically. Don't worry about the time. Don't worry about the opponent, right? Be who you are. And that's going to give you your best opportunity to win games, right? You start going rogue and doing your own thing and worrying about the time. Maybe against Portland last week, maybe we let the first goal affect us a little bit too much, and you start trying to do things that you don't normally do. That'll get you in trouble, right? The Rapids stuck with who they are on Saturday against Charlotte, and they were rewarded for it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's some season highs for the Rapids on the season so far, statistically speaking. So with the shots, as we mentioned earlier, with some of the stats we were running through, 22 shots, 6 of them on goal with an expected goal count of 3.3. So it showed that the Rapids were peppering basically Charlotte's goal. It was just a matter of time until they could earn the right opportunity. It presented itself, and Georgia, of course, took advantage of both of those opportunities when they came up in the goal from open play, and then the PK after the very tricky ball that he played, by the way. I was looking at that one, looking back at that goal, the pass that he plays to Hafa. I can see why the center back, Malanda, I think it was, was on there, was very, very doubtful as to whether he should step in and try to get the ball or just try to run back with Hafa. It was very deceptive, even as someone watching from on the TV angle, let alone being the guy on the field who has to try to figure out what to do in the moment.
And when you're Hafa's a savvy guy, right? And you get close to him, he's strong, man. And you start getting into upper body tangles with him and being unsure about yourself. Hafa has no time for that. He's going to be direct. He's going to say, okay, I'm going to take advantage of this. And that's exactly what he did. Because I actually thought he was going to undercut the run. He was going to go in front of Malanda. Yeah. And then, he ends up going behind him, and it's game over at that point. He's either scoring or he's getting pulled down. I wonder why he wasn't red carded there, by the way.
I was actually wondering,
he doesn't make a play on the ball, does he?
No. Because I think Malanda knew that it was either you take the man out or let him go 1v1 against Christian Kalina. And that's why I was kind of wondering why it wasn't.
And I'm not going to question it because
we can leave it at that.
Okay,
because
fine.
if not, if I speak, I will be in trouble. So, we'll just leave it at that. But
okay, Jose.
I'm glad you picked that up. But with Hafa, I'm gonna. He hasn't scored, I think, last couple games that I'm trying, if I recall correctly, but it doesn't change the fact that he's the hardest working number 9 in this league, period. I'm just going to say it. For me, he's the hardest working number 9 on both sides of the ball. And that is, in terms of at least trying to, on the offensive side of things, shows how hard he works. And then, of course, anyone who watches him when he's off the ball, when we're in the high press, he's just in people's faces all the time. And we saw Charlotte, they struggled multiple times, try to play out of the back, play possession. They just couldn't be, whether it was Hafa or anybody else. But again, Hafa, hardest working number 9 in the league, period. Yeah. I'm not going to even have that up for discussion. So with that, before we move on to our next segment, Drew, we're going to, as we always do, promote the Rapids app. Because why do we always promote the Rapids app every week? Because it is your one-stop shop for everything to do with the Rapids. If you're looking for videos, highlights, access to tickets, be it to buy tickets to come to a game here at Dick's Sporting Goods Park, or to access your tickets so that you can scan them and get straight into the stadium to watch a match against Charlotte, or which our next one would be against San Diego in a couple weeks' time. So make sure you download the Rapids app, which is free, by the way. It's always nice to think things are free 99.
If it's free, it's for me.
You and me both, Jimmy. So make sure you download the Rapids app anywhere you can download them in the App Store, wherever you can access the Rapids app. And, of course, again, it is free. So, again, your one-stop shop for everything to do with the Rapids. Download the Rapids app today. All right, and welcome to Off the Pitch. This week, we've got winger Omir El Tigre Fernandez. Omir, I imagine this is a nickname I think that you got from your friends back home that they would call you that, correct?
Yeah, so it was it's just a nickname my dad when I was really young. I don't know if a lot of Hispanic people do that, but a lot of my friends had nicknames, and that was mine when I was younger. So a lot of my close friends didn't really call me by my first name. That's what they called me. So yeah, you can say that's my nickname.
I like the nickname a lot. I think we're gonna have to roll with that a little bit more, even maybe more than Omir, as long as you're okay with that, because El Tigre
Oh, I'm fine
is a
with it.
nice. So we'll roll with that. But so with El Tigre, so Omir, just to start off in terms of coming off the performance on Saturday, big 3 points. It's the first home win of the season for the group. How are you and the group feeling coming off that big win on Saturday against Charlotte?
Yeah, I think especially at this club, playing at home is a really big deal. We want to protect. For us, it's really sacred. When we come here, we want to give the fans a good, not only a good time, but obviously a win. It's what they come for, and it's what we play for. So, I think we could have maybe deserved a win earlier in the season, but I think we're glad that we got a good, obviously a shutout and 2 goals for the fans and a win. I think that was really important for us to get that going.
Omi, 2 of the last 3 games you've come off the bench to provide the game-winning assist. Now you're somebody who prepares every single week to play 90 minutes, right? You're somebody who wants to start as most players do, and you prepare in such a way. But you've embraced this role the last couple of weeks, coming off the bench, and done a really good job of it. What's your mindset? How do you prepare to come on and make an impact in second half of matches?
Yeah, I think like you said, everybody wants to play. At the end of the day, it's 11 players, and some people are gonna have to sit out. I think in those moments, I try to ask myself what can I help the team with, what makes me different as a player, and I think bringing a different dynamic when the team needs it, whether it's to close out a game or like in San Jose or the other night to come and help make something happen. I think I embraced that moment a little bit more, that attacking piece than the defending piece, just because of uh, an attacker, you want to score goals. But I tell Chris all the time, and he talks to me, and I tell him, you know what, Chris, like as much as I don't like it, I'm gonna help the team win when I come in, whether you need me to defend or whether you need me to create a goal. I think that's the mindset that I go in, and Chris is somebody that gives me that freedom. So obviously in this one, we needed a little spark off the bench, and I was glad that I could help give that assist to George.
Let's stay on the relationship that you have with Chris, because this is your second stint with him. Obviously, you guys were together at Red Bulls, and when we had you on the podcast last year, you talked a little bit about that dynamic with Chris. Now that you've been, back with him for over a year, how has he evolved here in y'all's second stint together with now the Rapids?
No, I think he has a little bit more experience, and you can kind of tell he's really sure of not only himself as a coach, but as in his like what do you call it, like ideology as a coach. I think he's uh I'm I don't remember what it was in 2019, if it was like his first full year or his second year
Mhm.
as a coach. um but now you can tell there's a big difference. There's a lot more, like he knows exactly what I want. He knows what I need from my players, and I think us players, we can sense that, and we appreciate it as well, because obviously he's the leader of our team, and it starts with him. So when he's sure of our play style and our intensity, we're going to match that on the field as well.
Omir, looking ahead to this weekend, that you guys are going to be on the road at BC Place against the Vancouver Whitecaps. It's a tough side, even if they're missing a couple pieces there. But one player in particular that you actually know from your time at the Red Bulls when you were there previously, in Brian White. He, ever since he joined the Whitecaps, he's been a problem for a lot of back lines and for a lot of teams ever since he's been there, scoring goals and presenting all sorts of problems. What's with you knowing Brian from your time at the Red Bulls? What's been the scouting report? What's some things that you've been telling or are going to tell the back line or the rest of your teammates in terms of how to handle someone like Brian White?
You know, I, Brian's a good friend of mine. I've known him for a really long time, and even back then he was an amazing player. He showed so many stints of how dangerous he can be as a goal threat, and the striker that he can become. And I think we've seen that. Obviously, the Vancouver team is doing really well, like you said, and he's a big part of that. Personally, if you ask me, I think my center backs are doing an amazing job so far. Obviously you can tell this last game. Um, I'm sure Drew can appreciate their performance, and obviously Charlotte was a great attacking team, and for our defense get a clean sheet in that and look really, really stable at all times throughout the whole game was, I think they're doing amazing. If they were to ask me for something, I would say, obviously, let's make sure we know where he's at all times, especially in the box, in those areas where, because he doesn't need much. I think Brian is a player that thrives on, chaos, whether it's a header or, a ball in the box. He looks for those moments and he tends to be at the right spot. So I think, again, our defense is doing amazing and they don't need much of my help. But, if they were to ask me, I'm just going to say, hey, like, in all moments, can we be aware of where this guy is, because he doesn't need that much space.
Good advice. Doesn't hurt to help the center backs in
Yeah.
that sense. One last thing I had for you, Omir, is because I'm not asking on behalf of the production staff who were curious about this, is have you found a good New York slice here in Denver? If not, is the search still kind of going in terms of finding a proper good New York slice around here?
Hold on, Omi, before you answer that, because my wife is from New Jersey, okay, and I know, okay, that there's New Yorkers do not believe in New Jersey's pizza, people from Jersey don't believe in New Yorkers pizza, but my wife, she hasn't found a good slice here either, right? We have a couple that she will accept, but I'm really curious to know if you found a good slice here.
Yeah, so
That's a
I don't
no.
really go. No, I haven't. But I don't really like. I don't really go out to look for pizza in areas that is. I mean, I appreciate New Jersey pizza just because I feel like I lived there for a while after when I was playing there, and had good slices. But if I'm not in New York or New Jersey, I don't really look for pizza. I'm not gonna try it if I have to. I tend to be a little bit disappointed for the most part, but no, I haven't. If people have a pizza that they recommend or a slice that I can try, please. We are open to that. But right now, I don't really expect much.
It would be like going to England and going to a baseball game or something,
Yeah, like you're gonna go. Yeah, that's kind of what I don't really waste my time eating pizza here or in other areas that's not New York or New Jersey.
Makes sense. It makes sense.
No, listen, Omir, you got standards in terms of what your pizza's got to be, and they're high. So anybody, again, if anybody's got any recommendations, make sure you're dropping it anywhere that we can see it, so that Omir knows where to go to find a proper New York slice. So, Omir, El Tigre, as we would like to know, thank you for taking the time to join us for Off the Pitch, man. Really appreciate you taking the time.
No, Mike, I appreciate it, and Drew, thank you so much for having me again.
Thanks, Omi. Always great to have you, bud.
Thank you. See you.
All right, Drew, as much as I love to talk about just the Rapids, it's always nice to keep tabs on what's going on around the league and see, because sometimes we'll have an opponent that's coming up pretty soon. And San Diego is one of these teams I want to talk about in just a bit. We got them in a couple weeks once we come back here at Dick's Sporting Goods Park. But to start, let's look at Minnesota versus RSL. Minnesota at home against RSL, where they earned the 2-0 win against an RSL side right now that it looks like they've hit a wall for the first time under Pablo Mastroeni. Feel like they're kind of struggling a little bit to get the year going. RSL right now, they're 2-0-4. So like I mentioned, struggling a little bit to get this season started for them for the first 6 matches at least. The weather was awful. Clearly, you could look at the pitch. There were some parts of the pitch that looked
standing water.
I don't envy the groundsman that has to kind of tend to that afterwards, because that's they've got their work cut out for them.
Yeah.
For I believe it's Minnesota, right? That we have 5 goals on the season for them, one of which is an own goal, or rather, excuse me, sorry, I mixed that up.
That's all right.
Drew B, I'm
I was
getting old,
gonna
man.
correct you anyway.
Gosh, I'm getting old, Drew. So RSL 5 goals on the season, one of which is an own goal. Again, that is for RSL. Minnesota on the night, 2 goals by Tani Loache. Since last year, he just popped into the scene, and he's continuing to follow through with his form.
Yeah, it's an interesting game with the weather. Minnesota looked like a good team. Let's start with them. Joaquin Pereira looks like every bit the DP that they brought him in to be last summer. Kelvin Yeboah, Tani Oluwaseyi, these guys, they're good players, and Robin Lod, deserves more credit than he gets. But Salt Lake, I never want to provide any fuel for them. Of course, when we actually play them, it doesn't matter form, who's on the field, whatever. We know it's going to be a battle. But yeah, they're not where they would have liked to have started. They lost a lot, right? You lose Chicho Arango, Andres Gomez went last summer, Anderson Julio, and Diego Luna. Lost some of his guys there, but he's obviously still such a talented, promising young player. RSL is one of those teams that they could turn it around once some of these newer signings start to hit their stride, but not where they want to be right now.
Yeah, I think in the end, I'm with you, Drew, where this is an RSL side, especially once we, the Colorado Rapids go up against them, that when you're in a derby, when you're in a match against your rival, like everything kind of goes out the window, and it's just who wants it more at that point, right? And then in terms of generally with RSL, I think Pablo Mastroeni has given fans and everybody who tunes into to RSL every reason to believe that this RSL eventually will turn things around. Ever since he stepped into the fold as their head coach, they've performed really well. Right? Yeah. Maybe of course they aspire for more, but like they've always given every reason to think that RSL will be a problem for a lot of teams in the West and in the league in general. So moving on to what was the St. Louis and Austin match. Austin getting a very important 1-0 win on the road for them. Mirto Usuni, their DP forward, opens his mark for the season in MLS. His first goal for his new club. Ever since the Rapids went to Austin and got that win on the road, the Austin have earned 3 wins on the trot. Maybe it's a little Rapids magic. I think that we had a little influence in there with Austin, but Austin nonetheless finding themselves right now in some pretty good form as they're trying to figure things out with new players under a new coach with the new style of play. So credit to them for being able to pull that off so far. And then St. Louis, that's 2 straight 1-0 losses. What did you see from that match, Drew?
It's interesting. Austin, we acknowledged on this podcast after we beat them there, like Austin's a good team, and we feel like they're going to be a good team. I didn't realize they would win 3 straight out of that match. But if you get Uzuni going, who proved in Spain and all the stops that he's been in that he can score goals, Bukhari looking like he's found his form and he's figured the league out a little bit, and you bring in a Brandon Vasquez. And a new coach in Nico Estevez, but not new to the league, and certainly somebody who knew Austin extremely well from coaching against him with FC Dallas. I think Austin's going to be a good team, and if they start scoring goals defensively, they're pretty sound. They're a team to keep an eye on. St. Louis, who knows? Like, they're just such a stark contrast from who they were under Bradley Carnell, where it was attack. Maybe we'll defend at times, but we'll defend with our attack, And now Melbourne, they sit deep, but they don't really try to hit you on the counter. You said last week, Mike, that you feel like they're gonna try to win games 1-0. That's dangerous in this league. It's maybe they're trying a little game theory, doing something different than what most of the other teams are doing in this league. But I don't know if you can win a lot. How many 1-0 games are there in this league? There's not. You look at up and down the board, 3-2, 4-3, 2-2. Like that. This league caters to attack and goals, and they have some good attacking players. But St. Louis is always an interesting team. And they will be again this season. But this was a well-deserved road win for Austin.
Yeah, and there's very little signs to show that they'll stop. Of course, every team has their moments, some bad streaks here and there. But again, I think they have enough quality with, I think, who's a good coach in Nico Estevez. I think who could carry them forward and move towards like higher in the standings as they would typically like to, especially going off that 22 season, right, where they had a wonderful year that year. But ever since then, they've struggled to kind of find anything relating to that sort of form and that sort of success. So we'll see where Austin goes, and St. Louis as well. I think seeing they're defensively astute at least. But like you mentioned, Drew, this is the league that caters to attack and where you need to find and take advantage of those opportunities when they present themselves. So St. Louis, we'll see if maybe they tweak things as the year goes on, because again, Olaf Melberg, new to the league, I think he'll start to slowly figure that out as you go, because this is a league that can be very unforgiving at times, and sometimes you learn the hard way. But that is what it is. That's MLS, and that's the brutal nature of it.
It is.
And then finally, Drew B, with I think what was a very entertaining first half between these two, San Diego FC versus LAFC. San Diego, man, they got going. What was it? After 40 minutes, it was 3-0, and you thought this game is done and dusted the way this is going. If not, it could be much, much worse. But then LFC because they felt like it'd get 2 goals back within the first, and a few minutes later. Of course, the red card that they get early on in the second half, Igor Jesus, with the second yellow, that obviously takes away the chances that LAFC really has of trying to make a comeback or at least earning a point on the road against San Diego. And this is an opponent that we're going to see in a couple weeks, Drew. Like I mentioned, once we're done with this trip to Vancouver this weekend, San Diego, for the first time in our history as a club, that the Rapids will be able to take them on here at Dick's Sporting Goods Park. So what did you see out of that matchup from both sides?
Well, I saw everything in that match. Literally, the first 45 minutes had everything, I feel like. And really, LAFC, even a man down, Ordaz comes on in the second half, and he and Bawanga had some opportunities. They were very direct and tried to go and tie the game up. I thought San Diego had some opportunities to put the game away as well. But they get bragging rights in Southern California right now. They've already beat the Galaxy at their place, and now they take down LAFC. That should be a fun region, a fun, it's Cascadia a little bit like Cascadia light. Okay, relax, Vancouver, Portland, and Seattle. I'm not calling it Cascadia. Okay, but it will be cool if those three teams form that derby, which we expect. It's already there between the Galaxy and LAFC, and if you like this league, then you want that to be a local kind of rivalry and derby. Okay, it's not going to be Cascadia. Trust me, I know
a long
y'all
way to
have
go
history.
to reach that.
y'all been here forever, which is great. But yeah, San Diego's a team that you've enjoyed watching so far, isn't it, Mike?
Yeah, I kind of like, I'm not going to put it up as one of the best, but like I think the midfield that they have, especially that they put out against LAFC this weekend, feels well balanced, and it suits them right now for how they're getting some of the results that they're getting. So you look at their midfielder, my goodness, I can't pronounce his name, so I apologize in advance. But there's the number 6 who operates kind of like folks have been likening him to Kyle Beckerman. For those who've been paying attention to the league for the past 15 years or so, know what he's about. Who can break up the play, but he's good on the ball and kind of keeps things steady for your group. Him in kind of a double pivot a little bit with Anibal Godoy, who. Godoy, I think, is very underappreciated in this league in terms of what he can offer, especially if you're a new club coming into the fold. He did it with Nashville, and when he was in Nashville, did that alongside Dax McCarty, who we know was just another really, really good piece to have there in terms of MLS experience and just the quality that he had as well. And in front of them, so those two would sit together in a double pivot so that Luca De La Torre kind of has freedom to kind of operate as a 10, especially with how technical he is. We know he's good on the ball. So I kind of like this midfield that San Diego has that can present problems for a lot of teams. Again, I'm not ready to put them up there just yet, but they have given every reason to kind of work their way up as one of the better midfielders in the West and potentially in this league as well. So like I mentioned, that we're going to see them in a couple weeks.
Soon.
We'll see if, it's nice and sunny in San Diego, but we'll see if they can handle the altitude in a bit. But that's in a couple weeks' time. We'll figure that out. What'll be against? It'll be a tough match for the Rapids once that comes around. But we'll preview that match a little bit more in depth once we get to that match in the lead up to that next weekend, I would say at this point. So. So that's going to do it for Around MLS, just to keep tabs on what's going on around the league a little bit. But, Drewby, now we've got this upcoming match.
Get back
this
to the
weekend.
Rapids.
Yes, I always love some good Rapids talk. This weekend, that the Rapids, the Burgundy Boys, they're going to travel up to Vancouver for their match against the Whitecaps in BC Place. That match is going to be Saturday, April 5th, 7:30 p.m. Mountain Time. So keep note of that, because typically games are 7:30 p.m. local time. So it would have been, in regular instances, 8:30 Mountain Time, but very strange that it's 6:30 Pacific.
I like it though,
but I don't mind it.
Even just an hour is.
I don't mind it. So just again, it is 7:30 p.m. Mountain Time that match is going to take place. Like I mentioned, at BC Place, which is actually a very neat stadium. If anybody ever gets the chance, a really cool stadium to check out. And of course, that match you can catch on MLS Season Pass on Apple TV. The Whitecaps, Drewby, last 3 matches so far that they earned a 1-0 win at Dallas. But they have struggled a bit lately, especially as they start to consider the fact that they have some CCC matches coming up. They lost to the Chicago Fire, who have seemingly been finding their form under Greg Berhalter. That was a 3-1 loss at home versus Chicago. And then went to Toronto and another game with some terrible weather there. That was a 0-0 draw. So if anything, a good draw maybe to take away on the road against one of your Canadian rivals. And Vancouver, it seemed like they controlled that match, but just couldn't get that deciding goal. So maybe they felt like they left some points on the board there. But nonetheless, you still take a point on the road, knowing how difficult it is to travel in this league and earn results. And let's look at just how these two teams between the Rapids and the Whitecaps, how they relate in terms of their records. So the Rapids right now are 3-1-2, with Vancouver at 4-1-1. Again, recently they just had the loss and the draw that kind of throw off their perfect start with the 4 matches that they won to start the season. In terms of points, Rapids have 11, Vancouver have 13. Goals scored so far, Rapids have 8, Vancouver 10. Goals against, that the Rapids have 7, Vancouver 5. Average possession, like we always talk about, the Rapids typically will have a little less than most, 45.1%, as opposed to Vancouver. It looks like they like to hold on to the ball a little bit, play with it with 56.7% of possession so far. This is a Vancouver side, Drewby, that, like we mentioned, 4 wins to start off this season under their new head coach, Jesper Sorensen, who is new to the league. who came in place of Vanni Sartini after he was let go by the club in the past offseason. They've, like I mentioned, won 4 straight to start MLS play. And very impressively, I must say, I think it is worth noting in CCC play that they took down Saprissa and Monterrey, right? Monterrey, who we know is a powerhouse in this region. Now, and that is, like I mentioned, this is going to be something that might play a role as it pertains to how they're going to line up against the Rapids on Saturday, because on Wednesday, albeit at home at BC Place, that they play against Pumas from Mexico. So maybe their eyes are a little bit more focused on that match as opposed to maybe the Rapids, but that doesn't change the fact that, Drew, this is a Vancouver Whitecap side. I think that still presents a lot of danger, and they know what they're about as well.
Yeah, and all the things you just mentioned are, Vancouver have had the best start in MLS than really any other team, right? If you couple that with their CCC success so far, Saprissa and Monterrey, it's massive, and they've already proven that they're deep. And so regardless of what they do on Wednesday night, it has to be noted, right? Like, you're going to be coming off an emotional high, low, whatever, after playing against Pumas, right? Regardless of the result, regardless of who you play, that's who all their focus is going into right now, right? They no focus is being put on the Rapids. I don't know Sorensen, right? I've never been in his locker room, but my guess is their preparation is up until Wednesday night is going to be all Pumas, and so the Rapids will get a couple extra days to prepare for Vancouver versus Vancouver preparing for the Rapids, and so that needs to be noted. That being said, Vancouver have proven already this season that they're deep, that they're willing to rotate, and that they can beat just about anybody in the league so far, right? Obviously, they haven't played everybody, but their early season success is a sign that this is going to be a big match for the Rapids. Like I said, regardless of whether there's squad rotation or not. But the Rapids do need to, and we're going to get into the keys here in a minute, but they do need to keep in mind the fact that they do play Wednesday night in a big match, CCC quarterfinal. How can you take advantage of that?
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe this is the right time to play the Vancouver Whitecaps at their place, because, again, this is a team that in the last few years has shown that they're difficult to play against in their place. Of course, the Rapids, if I recall last season, that they lost on the road against Vancouver in a fairly tight game that came down, I think, to the wire.
Yeah.
The Rapids know very well that this is a tough place to go to against a very good team, even if they're missing the likes of a Ryan Gauld, who, as we cited in this podcast, it was tough to see that injury that he had early on, but thankfully is nothing serious.
Yeah.
So it's good to see for the Whitecaps on that was the case. But I don't think he will be available. We'll have to wait and see. It'd be very tough to see him be available for this match against the Rapids. But in terms of players who I'd imagine would be available for the Whitecaps, right, is going to be Jaden Nelson. This is someone that you, Drew, actually you know from your time in Toronto when he was just a young buck in the academy.
Yeah.
But I think ever since he had shown his quality initially when he was a part of the first team more consistently in Toronto, and then eventually makes his way to Europe. From there, makes his way back to the league this season with the Vancouver Whitecaps. You could see there was something there when he was in Toronto, but it looks like after coming back from his experience in Europe, that he looks like a little bit more put together. He looks like a much more of a threat this time around, a little bit more of a refined player that I think really could pose a lot of problems for the Rapids.
I think so too. When I first met Jaden, he was very young at TFC, just coming up through the through the academy. But he was confident but respectful. It was like he wasn't one of these. I'm gonna come train with the first team, and I'm young, but I'm gonna show them. No, he was willing to learn. He was willing to communicate and have conversations. And when he went away to Europe after having some time with the first team TFC, I didn't know what he was going to turn into, and he's still young. It's still early in his career, but coming back, you can tell like he's learned some things, and he is a big part of this Whitecap side, and he's very direct. He's very positive. He's quick. He's shifty. He's got some goals. He's got some assists. He obviously went overseas even just for a short time. He went to Rosenborg and then went on loan to a German side. He's come back and he looks still confident, but like he's learned a lot, like he's had more conversations, and he's certainly a player to watch.
That was a player that I had on the Whitecap side. Who is somebody on the Rapid side that you want to keep an eye on, Drew, for this match against the Whitecaps?
I think I'm not going to pick one player in particular. I'm going to talk about the Rapids wing play because I do feel like this Whitecap side, who are good at just about everything, they are both sides of the ball, right? They're not spectacular at everything. They're deep, right? They've got goal contributions from like, actual goal scorers, 8 or 9 different players, goal contributions from, 12, 13 different players. Defensively, they're solid. One area I think the Rapids can get after them is on the wings. You look at some of the goals that the Whitecaps have conceded in the past several games, and it's getting in behind their outside backs, right, with pace and directness. So you look at Kevin Cabral, Calvin Harris, Omir Fernandez. Is it Oliver Loraz? Spending some time out on the wings. But I think the Rapids, wing play and ability to get in behind. This is obviously a cornerstone with what the Rapids want to do anyway. But I think against Vancouver, a squad that might be rotated, that will be coming off an emotional midweek match against Pumas, regardless of the result of it, you might be able to get after their outside backs.
The Rapids wing play kind of ties it a little bit to one of the keys of the match that you have for the Rapids in terms of what is going to be critical for the Rapids, what they need to do on their end to be able to take advantage of a Vancouver side that might be a little bit tired coming off a CCC match against a strong Pumas side.
I think the Rapids can't get too caught up into the fact that Vancouver do play midweek and the Rapids don't, right? But you do have to be aware of it, and you need to put them in a fast game. Because regardless of whether they rotate players or not, they're mentally and physically not going to probably be where the Rapids will be, having had a full week of rest and preparation. And so you need to put them in a fast match from the jump, right? Even at their place, go after them. And this is what the Rapids want to do anyway. You put Charlotte in a fast match, and they were done by the end of the game, right? So go against a team coming off of, they've already played 2 more games than the Rapids because they've advanced this far in CCC. So go after them early, put them on their heels, right? Get after them with your energy, with your pace of play, with your directness, and do it from the start. And I think over the course of 90 minutes, that's going to set you up pretty nicely against what could be, a team that might fatigue a little bit quicker than you do.
It's a tough test. This is like you mentioned, Drew. This is a Whitecap side that knows what they're about. Even if they're missing a couple pieces, especially an important one, Ryan Gault, who gives them that creative sort of aspect to them and much more dangerous aspect to them, especially when they go in transition. Someone who can find the ball, even dribble himself, quite frankly. He's just because of the danger that he presents. But even without him, that they still are just very tough to play against, right? And on my end, for me, in terms of where this match could really be decided between the Rapids and the Whitecaps is in the midfield. This is a Vancouver side that has a very strong midfield for me. One of the better midfields, I'd say, in this league. Andres Cubas, who just cleans everything up for them. He's everywhere.
He's underrated,
all at once.
Man.
Yeah,
he's not mentioned enough.
No, he's very good. Yeah. And there's by no accident that he's getting called up to the Paraguayan national team and is starting and playing for them as well. Yeah. So he's a very, very underrated midfielder in this league and puts out a lot of fires for the Vancouver Whitecaps. He's tremendous for them. Pedro Vite, he, as of last year, that he's really started to find his form and find his place in this group, and is only getting better, which is kind of the more concerning part. So when you look at this Whitecaps midfield and compare it to what is a very strong Rapids midfield, this game is going to come down, I think, to me, who's going to win the midfield.
Yeah.
Whoever wins the midfield in this match is going to win this match and take all 3 points. You look at the Rapids side this is a very good Rapids midfield. You look at Josh Atencio, who does kind of what Andres Cubas does, but I think does more on the ball in terms of looking forward with positive play after he's done sweeping and cleaning everything up in front of the back line and behind the other midfielders. Ollie, whether he's out on the flank like he was playing against Charlotte or if he's in the midfield in front of Josh, he's there to clean things up, but also can really play positively on the ball. Cole, we know he can do his thing once he gets on the ball as well. And then Georgie right there. So this, for me, it just comes down to the midfield. Who's going to be able to kind of win out in the midfield? Whoever wins the midfield in this match between the Rapids and the Whitecaps, I think will earn all 3 points.
Sebastian Berhalter also seeming to come into his own for the Whitecaps in midfield. And we haven't even mentioned Brian White, who is, talk about underrated. The dude just scores goals. He occupies the center backs, right? And he's not just a goal poacher, right? He's a runner as well. And so you link him up with that midfield there, and it's no wonder Vancouver are having success early in the season, which they've been a good team now for a couple years. They have, but there has been a coaching change there. They haven't made any noise in the playoffs yet. Is this the year? I don't know. It's still way too early to decide. But they're a team that is good at just about everything, and don't have a whole lot of weaknesses. So it'll be a fun battle.
Yeah, it'll be a very fun and interesting match to watch for like the neutral. But of course, for Rapids fans, Whitecaps fans, to tune in, I think what'll be a very, very interesting match. Like I mentioned, for me, I think that midfield is going to be so key between these two sides. And we had a fan question. So if you guys don't know already, that we've started recently doing an AMA. You can ask Drew and I any question, anything that kind of comes to mind. What's Drew's favorite food? What's his favorite memory from his career? I think we can. We're wondering how much more memory I have left at this point with how old I'm getting. So it's always on Instagram typically after what is a Saturday match on Sunday mornings that we'll put out a poll on our Instagram story. If you have a question for either Drew or I, you can throw it in there, and with the chance to have you guys featured on the podcast so that we can answer your question. This week we have a question from Chris92. Thank you for sending your question in. Asking about an update on Ted Kudi-Pietro. So, of course, this is a winger that we picked up from DC United last month, very recently. I think a lot of folks are very excited about what he can offer this group, especially with the already existing pieces in this side, Drew. But he had been dealing with some issues with his shoulder. So it's taken a little bit of time for him to kind of get up to speed and make sure he's fully fit so that he can actually feature for the Rapids. What have you seen so far from Ted?
Well, Ted's somebody I'm really excited about as well. So Chris92 is not alone. Ted's close. He's starting to work his way back into full training, which is imminent, I believe. But he's somebody I'm excited about because even in some of the exercises where he is involved, he looks like he's going to help the Rapids out right away. And he's a new signing as well. And you can. He's going to be an important piece because the Rapids went out and got a young player that has a bright future, that was a big part of DC United, right? And they were super excited about him, and I thought he linked up really well with Christian Benteke in their time together. But he looks like he's going to help the Rapids. I think he'll link up extremely well with the Georgi Mihailovic and Hafa Navajo. He looks very direct. He looks very hungry. He's a great locker room presence. So even though he hasn't made an impact yet on the field, he certainly has in that locker room and on the training field, whether he's been off with the guys making their way back or in some of the exercises he has been involved in. Ted Kudi-Pietro. Great last name, by the way.
Heck of a last name.
Somebody that the Rapids and myself included, really excited for him to make his debut here with us. I'm hoping pretty soon. Yeah,
of course. Yeah, like you're at training every day with the first team, so you have a very good idea of like who's around and who's doing what, and so take it from a primary source who knows what's going on around the team, particularly as it pertains to Ted. And if anybody needs a reference point in terms of how he plays, like if you look back to 2023, the way he linked up with Christian Benteke for quite a few stretches of games. Man, him and those two just like were just had a real connection, and Ted was scoring goals, assisting Benteke more often than not. But I think that's where Ted really kind of stuck out in the league, and hence why he finds himself here with the Rapids. So it'll be very exciting to see him do that, and I would say even more, honestly, with this Rapid side, considering some of the pieces this group has. So, any final thoughts, Drew? That kind of does it for the show. But any final thoughts before we put a bow on it?
No, I don't think so. Happy birthday again.
Thank you, man.
Appreciate
you. I appreciated that shout out.
Are you just celebrating one a year? It feels like you're celebrating more than
like
that.
I said, dude, at this right now, if we're doing one a year, we're not doing too well right now at that rate. If we did it every day, I don't think we'd be in much worse spot at this point. But no, I appreciate it, man. Especially, the shout out to, pregame when you and Connor Cape were doing Out of Bounds. And I know my mom who was in town, shout out mom. Hola, ma. Ojalá que estés bien. I know she really appreciated the shout out from you because, she loves and respects you tremendously. So, so no, man. Yeah, it was. I think that was a very good day overall. Just for me personally, just between birthday, having mom out there, but the 3 points, man. Like especially at home, it's always so nice to be able to reward the fans with that and be a part of that experience and just experience the good vibes all around when we get 3 points here at home. It's
Absolutely.
Fantastic, man. So
let's do it again next time.
Let's do it again next time, which will be in a couple weeks again. Like I mentioned, against San Diego. But before that, we got Vancouver Whitecaps on the road this upcoming weekend. Like I mentioned, that's going to be this Saturday. Let me get the date before I forget because I keep forgetting things all the time lately. So Saturday, April 5th, 7:30 p.m. Mountain Time kick. You can catch that match on MLS Season Pass on Apple TV. So that's going to do it for us here on the show. My thanks to the production staff, Rich, Miles, and of course my good friend Drew Moore. I've been your host, Mike Ravolo, and we'll see you guys on the next one.